I'm Brian V, and this is Why We Work. Today, I have the great pleasure of speaking with Jan McInnis, also known as the Work Lady. Jan is a comedian, keynote speaker, comedy writer, as well as author. Today, I want to find out from Jan, how can we be funny in the workplace and not fall into the gutter, keeping it clean, as Jan does in her comedy? Join me today in my conversation with Jan, the Work Lady McGinnis. I'm Brian V, and this is Why We Work. Today, I have the great pleasure of speaking with Jan McGinnis, the Work Lady. Good day, fine lady.
Hi, how are you doing, Brian?
I'm doing wonderfully well. Thank you for coming on here. I really appreciate your time. Jan, for people that don't know who you are, what industry are you in? And can you tell us a bit about, you and I were just talking about some of the things you're doing now. What is it that you're doing now?
Well, and I'd like to thank you for saying the work lady because I have been introduced as the working girl. That is a whole different profession. I'm a comedian, all right, and I do the work lady because I do a lot of work jokes, and people can't spell McInnis, so I figured I'd have to come up with something. So I came up with the work lady for the website, and that's kind of what I go by on occasion. So I'm a comedian and comedy writer, keynote speaker, author. You know, stay at home with the dogs right now.
Yeah, today, nowadays is tough on many industries, but comedy for certain.
Yes, I had a lot of stuff booked for last year. My last out of state or last gig I was on an actual stage was on March 7th last year, and I had a lot of stuff booked. It moved, most of it moved to this year, 2021. One or two moved to next year. Um, so we're hoping for a good spring and everything lightens up here.
I'd
Um,
like to see the stats on, say, a Netflix or a YouTube and the number of people turning to comedy. Because over the last few months, I've turned to comedy, and I don't know, this secret desire. Sorry, I don't mean to insult your industry by being a comedian, right? And I know,
Everybody says
right,
they all say,
right,
"Oh, I'm funny.
right.
I should be a comedian."
Well, I'm not funny, but I wonder how many people turned because of being locked in. And unfortunately for comedians, although as you said to me a moment ago that you're still able to do some keynote speeches online and stuff, it's still not quite, I mean, the idea of going out, right? Being
Oh,
out and seeing a comedian, or for you, being on stage and getting that feeling from, I wonder how many people are actually there, a new, if there's a new interest in comedy, a new appreciation for comedy, because I know I have it myself.
sure. I think entertainers in general have really helped out. You know, we've got the healthcare workers, we've got the frontline, grocery store workers, but then after that, we've got people like they're helping our mental health, which I think are the comedians, singers, songwriters, filmmakers, all the entertainment folks, and probably the park service, all the state, national, local parks that are open and letting us get outside and get our mental health together. So I hopefully people have gotten a new appreciation of going out to not just the big blockbuster stuff and
Mhm.
big concerts, but they go out and see some local talent during the week when things open up.
Yeah, I certainly discovered this newfound interest, and I wish I had the opportunity to go to a club, right? And go to a, listen to you,
Yeah.
listen to anyone, get up there, because when you start to understand, which I've seen some things on Netflix, the the dedication it takes on your part to write a joke. Maybe you could even talk about that, the process, and like getting your set and then being up there and having that sort of
Right.
special moment.
Right. I'll say that doing these virtual are fun, but you are talking to your computer, and the hardest part for me is afterwards. You turn the computer off, and it's sort of a letdown. It's like, whoa, you're not talking to audience members, you're not interacting, you're not running to the airport.
Mhm.
So that's kind of the weird part about the virtual stuff. Aside, no laughs during it, but certainly you're gonna get used to just having fun in your own head. Uh, but then, yeah, writing the jokes, it's really hard to figure out if something's funny. If you've written, I mean, I've written material over the COVID, but
Mhm.
there is absolutely no way to try it out. I've had people who want to be comedians contact me, and I said, "Great, start writing," but this is the only job where you really have to learn by trial by fire. You have to get on stage and do it. You know, you can read books and practice in front of your mirror, but you got to get up there and learn your timing and your stage presence. And if the jokes even work, I write a ton of stuff, and it always shocks me. You know, you write jokes and you think, oh, this is going to just hit great, and nothing. And then you kind of throw out a line, or you're kind of talking, or a joke that you didn't think was that big a deal kills. It's really, so it's, and I talked to some other comedian friends about that once. We were all together writing, and I think we came up with maybe 2 out of 10 jokes that you write really hits, has some legs on it, it's going to stay, something like that. It was really amazing, and they were all having the same experience, that it's not everything is funny. You know, certainly you can write into your character, and if things that you say with your persona are funny on stage, they're not funny on paper. But the process is really stopped right now when there's not a lot of back and forth.
It would almost be like being a scientist or someone that's making medicine and stuff, and you have no patience to give it to, right? You're making all of these these wonderful medicines, and like, but I can't give it to anyone. So you're like, I don't know, testing on yourself. I'm like, I'm
Right.
still here.
And right now, and you know, I'm doing keynotes and I slide in a joke here or there, but you have no clue.
No
And
feedback.
usually for me also, when I'm doing material, new material, the first time I get it out of my mouth is sometimes it doesn't really get the big laugh anyway, because you're just kind of forming it and seeing how it works. You got to tweak it here and there. Once in a while, a joke just hits off the bat, but a lot of times, you know, it takes a couple of tries to get it out there. And then there's the jokes that we try over and over, and then if they don't work, they don't work. You let them go for 6 months, you try them again, and years later you're like, I got to get rid of this joke, but but there's something there, you know, you just won't give up on it. But right now we're on kind of this treading water pattern, waiting to, I think, you know, you can run it past friends, but it's really, you need the audience.
Oh, here he comes, or here she comes with her joke.
I
You're
know.
trying to test your neighbors, like, oh no, here she comes.
And I'll tell you, I learned a long time ago when I first started out, don't run it by friends, because
Yeah.
if it doesn't get a laugh, if you're just trying to throw it into a conversation, and then it's just sort of like, oh, maybe it wasn't funny.
Mm,
And you never want your friends to tell you what's funny. You don't want to say, hey, what do you think of this? Because a lot of times, if you're not on stage, you're not in the moment, you're not performing it, it doesn't come out funny anyway. So, you know, you shy away from doing any of that stuff. And nobody, I have to say, friends really don't want you to be on all the time. That's no fun for anyone.
okay.
We've all been around those people that always have to be on and always have to um, uh, pop off with jokes, and it's annoying. You know, I have friends that are like, "Wow, Jan, this is really like a job for you. You aren't always on. If you met me on the street, you wouldn't. In the airplane, people ask what you do. You know, they're shocked because you're not sitting down talking, throwing out lines and all that. It's annoying."
Yeah, I think it's one of the hardest professions to be in, to have someone sit in front of you that's a comedian and say, be funny,
Uh,
make me laugh.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, you get that when you do, over the years, I've done hundreds of radio interviews, and you know, you have once in a while you get one that doesn't know how to really interview, and they'll be like, "So tell us a joke." It's like, no, that's not how it works. You gotta, you know, I'll give you some setups, you know, in
Mm,
advance. I'll tell you, ask me about kids, ask me about work, you know, and then I can
mm,
kind of throw it in casually in conversation, not tell me a joke,
yeah,
make me laugh.
I don't plan on being humored here. I want to get to the nitty gritty of the work lady. So when did
Yeah.
the work lady become the work lady as a teen or preteen? What was your first job, Jan?
My first job was, gosh, I worked at a retirement slash nursing home. You want to know my first job or my first comedy job?
No, first job, maybe selling lemonade, delivering newspapers, baling
No,
hay.
I had a newspaper route. I think I made 1 or 2 cents a paper, and it was hundreds. It was every Wednesday. My brother and I had it.
How old were you
Uh,
then?
oh, I think I was like 12 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if I did anything to make money. No, you know, no, I did the newspaper route when I was, I guess, 16 was when we were allowed to work. I did the nursing home slash retirement home. It was a new concept back then to
Mm-hmm.
put people into these sort of not, they weren't nursing home type thing. They were sort of a what we now you would go in if you were like 65 or 70. You
Mm-hmm.
don't really need
Retirement
help,
home.
but you want
Yeah.
to kind of a community, yeah. And they had a memory care function to it, but it was a sort of people could move in if they were in their apartments. They could live on their own. And I
You were
worked in the
16?
kitchen. I was 16, yeah.
Why did you do that? I mean, even the newspaper route, what got you out of the house to do that?
My mom wanted us to get a newspaper out. She wanted us to do something, start making some money. I did babysitting too. I hated it. I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a kid person. I did do some babysitting. Didn't enjoy that. And the newspaper route, my mom just wanted us to start earning some money and get moving. And so I think she kind of set it all up, and we got this route, and we had it for a few years. Yeah.
As you got into college, or sorry, as you got into high school, did you start thinking about college? Did you think about a career? How old were you when you started thinking about what possibly could have been your future?
Well, gosh, good question. I think since I was a kid, probably 10 or
Mm-hmm.
9 or 10, I thought about being a comedian. I never told a soul. I never told a soul. I just thought, you got to work. My dad didn't seem to like his job very much. So I thought, well, you got to do something fun. I was never the class clown. Nobody ever, only one person came up and said, they had those superlatives senior year of high school, like best dressed and most athletic, and I'm better than you. My friend Judy came up and said, sometimes you say funny things, so I'll put you down as funniest. So I got 2 votes, me and Judy. But at my class reunion a couple of years ago, Judy's the only one that came up to me and said, "Oh, you're a comedian. That's perfect." Everybody else is like, "Really? You weren't that funny in high school. Are you still living at home with your parents?" Uh, but so I thought it'd be fun. I thought, you got to work. Okay, I'll be a comedian. But I didn't tell anyone because nobody said I was funny. So it was kind of in the back of my head. I went to college, didn't really know what I wanted to do besides that. And I
What
remember
did you
graduating.
what did you take in college?
I was communications major, was a minor in
Okay.
psychology, went to Virginia Tech, loved it, had fun. I remember thinking I'm going to have a job with travel. I remember walking across campus thinking, I'm going to see these friends. We're all going to head off into different parts of the world, but I'm going to see them because I'm going to have a job that maybe I'll be a comedian, maybe I'll travel. But I really didn't have any direction. And there's no college course to be a comedian. Now people have courses they wanted you to take to be a comedian, but there was no path. If you want to be a doctor, there's a way to do it, a lawyer. But as a comedian, there was no path. And I guess I waited for permission for a while, waited for people to say you should do it. But I never told
Mhm.
anyone I wanted to do it. And graduation night, we went to dinner to celebrate my graduation with my family. And I remember looking at my parents and thinking, now is not the time to tell them I want to be a comedian. So I did. I went into a market. I
Yeah.
literally stumbled into different jobs. So,
Did you secretively write any jokes from the age of 10 on?
you know what I did? I had a diary, and I used to watch sitcoms out of the time, and I would write my ideas for sitcoms. And I remember one time my brother stole my diary, and thinking he was going to find all my secrets of the boys I loved and this and that. When he read it, he came back to me with this look on his face like, you are weird. It's like it was a diary that was nothing he expected. He just gave it back to me. It's like, this is nothing I can use against you. So I kind of wrote stuff, and I did throughout my early jobs write down things I thought were funny,
Hmm.
and which turned into be some of the jokes that I started off with, and a couple that I still have in my act today.
When did you first take the stage as a comedian?
I had some starts and stops. I guess I'd done my day job. The 80s was the big boom in comedy.
Hmm.
Well, I wasn't doing stand up then. Had a day job. I believe I took a class, and uh, it was written just one of these little open university type classes. You can sign up at night, and we had to do a final for the class. And so I wrote some jokes, and I know what I did actually before that. In the 80s, I went on stage once, and had an open mic, had a great show.
How long was your
And
set? I think that's a
5
normal
minutes, but
comedy
but
comedy question, right? Like
you
how
do three
long
to
was the
five
set?
minutes.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, 3 to 5 minutes. I remember I uh, maybe be 3 minutes finished up. I was so freaked out by the lights because I can't see anything. It looks like you
Hmm.
can't see anything, and that was so foreign to me. But people were laughing. It was great. That I walked out of the club, and the professional comedian that was there that night, he was emceeing the open micers. He followed me out and said, "Will you please do this again? Please, you were really good. Please do this." And I waited 7 years. I missed the whole 80s boom. I was so freaked out. So then I took a class, and I got um, the we had to do a little 5 minute thing.
Hmm.
This is 7 years later, 6 or 7 years later. 5 minute thing that said uh, comedy thing, and I did great. The instructor's wife and his girlfriend were the judges, and they loved it, and they came up to me and they're just like, "You've got to try this again." And so then I still didn't do it. Then this Jay Leno in the 90s, early 90s, 91, 92, somewhere around there, had something called the Jay Leno comedy competition. And what he was trying to do was find a comedian. He was having all these competitions at comedy clubs around the country to find a comedian to be on his show. So you had to send in a tape first to the TV station, and they were in every state, in every city. It was massive. Many comedians got their start with this, and or at least got on stage. Well,
Hmm.
I thought, okay, I had to have the tape postmarked by the day after Thanksgiving, that Friday. And I didn't have an act. I mean, I had a few jokes I'd had from the class the year before and 7 years earlier. So I thought, well, it's the day after Thanksgiving. My family's funny. I'll go to Thanksgiving dinner. I'll write some material. I didn't know you took a long time to write material. I didn't know anything.
Going home for Thanksgiving to do some research.
Yeah, I was. And I was, at the time I lived in Virginia. So my parents were in Virginia. So didn't have to go very far. Well, nobody was funny at Thanksgiving. Nobody was funny. And so I remember going home that night and thinking, well, I've got no material, and I have to have this postmarked by tomorrow at 5. So I went to bed, and the weirdest thing, Brian, this is odd. I believe the universe pushes you to different things. I still had my marketing job at the time, and I'd been going to a lot of trade shows, and they gave you, at the time, the big giveaway gift was an alarm clock. I never used them. I threw them in this bin I had next to my bed. And I never used an alarm clock to wake up. I never needed to.
Hmm.
That next morning, half a dozen alarm clocks went off. And it was May at 7 a.m. And by the time I got them off, and they'd never gone off, never. And I was wide awake. And I thought, well, I might as well try to write some jokes.
Hmm.
So I had borrowed my dad's little mini cassette. I didn't know you were supposed to mail in a videotape. I did not. When they said tape, I was so naive. I borrowed my dad's mini cassette recorder, and I wrote some jokes and walked around my living room and read them into the recorder. I didn't know you were supposed to do it live. I was so naive. I mailed this in, got it in literally 20 minutes before the postmark. The next week, the TV station calls me, and she said, "We've picked you. You're one of the contestants. We've got a night in Maryland, a night in DC, and a night in Virginia. You're going to be on the Virginia show. Uh, I mean, it's a lot. You have to win that, and you have to win the state, and
Hmm.
whatever." But I said, "How many people entered this contest?" I mean, if you're calling me, she said, "We had over 100 people. You're one of the 10 that's going to go to Virginia." And I was floored. Okay, floored. Tell me if I'm talking too long, but this is just
No, it's great.
so. So I said, okay. So they said it's next week. So the next week, the Maryland show was the first night. And I was watching the local news, and the newscaster, Arch Campbell, was broadcasting from the Maryland Comedy Club. And I was watching it going, okay, I've got to do my jokes in a couple of days. And I practiced with the light on in my face, because I knew that was what scared me before. And Arch Campbell said, we are here at this comedy club in Maryland. There's a contest to be on the Tonight Show. We have professional comedians vying for a spot. And I jumped straight out of bed and went, professional? I've done this once. I had a class. I've been on, 2 open mics. I was freaked out. So we get there. Finally, that night comes, and my only goal was to not be the worst. I just thought, oh, okay, if I can just hang in and not be the worst, I'll save some face. Well, I got there and there was the other comedians. I literally knew nothing about it. And they got how this works. They said, well, we're going to draw, we want to pick spots, I was so naive. I said, well, I'll take spot 4. I didn't know. They all looked at me like I'm an idiot. They go, we draw numbers, Jan. You can't just pick a spot. And I was so embarrassed. And I said, okay. And well, I ended up getting number 4. And I went on stage and I wasn't awful. I was pretty good. I had some good and bad moments, but it went well. I had one friend of mine showed up. I told my friends, do not show up. My one friend showed up, Cheryl, and with her husband, and they enjoyed it. And I had a woman come up to me afterward and said, you got to do this again. You really do. A woman, I didn't even know who she was. The next day I'm in the office. I'm thinking, okay, that was good. Next day I'm in the office and my office mate comes in and she goes, hey, did you see the newspaper? I said, no. She goes, well, you're in it. And they had written up me and one of my jokes as well as other contestants. They said some of the contestants were good, but a little uneven, like McInnis, and they put in one of my jokes. Nobody could get the paper after that because I think my mom bought up all the copies.
Them all.
Yeah, but I was floored. So I'm still Brian. I waited one more year. This is ridiculous. But I thought, I'm just not, I have no entertainment background. This is it. I'm not a comedian. So finally I couldn't get the bug out of my system. So the next January I thought, I'm going on one last open mic. This is it. This is done. I am a marketing person. I'm not doing this. I went to an open mic, a local club in DC, the Comedy Cafe, a very good room. And I walked in and we drew numbers. I was number 1. I remember freaking out going, I do not want to be number 1. Some poor guy traded for me for number 4. Never saw him again, probably because he was number 1. And I went up and I had to do 5 minutes. I got through 3 minutes rocking. And this was the same club I'd been at 7 years earlier for the open mic. Just rocking. And I remember this voice in my head said, you can't remember the rest of your 5 minutes. Just get off the stage. You're doing really well. So I got off the stage and I'm sitting there having that little seesaw in my head about, I got to do this. No, you're marketing. I got to do this again. No. And the MC tapped me on the shoulder and he said, call Pat tomorrow. I said, who's Pat? He said, she books this place. She saw your act. She wants to give you some MC work. And if you ever had an epiphany, that was mine. I literally walked out on air, thinking, this is what I'm doing the rest of my life. I don't know where it's going to take me, but I'm doing this and I'm going into it full time and I'm going to make a career. And I did. I ended up getting work with Pat. She booked me for that A room to MC. And I kept my day job about 2.5 years. After that, working all nights and weekends in comedy clubs. And finally I left my day job and did it full time. And it's 25 years later since I left my job.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was so many starts and stops and so many things happened. And it just kind of pushed me into it.
Did you make a conscious decision to stay clean? Because you are renowned for having a clean act, and there's some people that have there's some people that have clean acts, but the more popular ones are not clean, and then even the ones that are clean kind of push the envelope to where the suggestive aspect of it just makes it not as clean. Not knocking them, but how was that process for you in making that decision?
Well, I always tell new comedians, if every other word you say is a cuss word and you are dirty and you want to talk about sex or drugs or rock and roll, you're going to do it. You're not going to work the places I do, but you've got to be you. That's what people pay for, is to see you. You find the punchline if you're clean. You have to find a strong punchline because you can't use a F-bomb to find it. To punch it up a little bit, you've got to have a good punchline. I just wanted, that's kind of how I am. I do cuss everyone, stub my toe or whatever, get mad. Sure, I cuss, and I don't have see anything wrong with comedians who cuss or are dirty, as long as it's funny and there's a punchline. For me, I wanted my family and friends to be able to come out and not be embarrassed either. And I don't want to talk about, I don't want to talk about certain things on stage. And I, I don't want to make anyone uncomfortable. I also was very, very fortunate, Brian, at the beginning of my career, working in the marketing world. First of all, my marketing materials were way better than my act at the beginning, but also I was able to see the corporate market. I remember putting together a big business convention for major corporations, and we hired entertainment. We hired the Capitol Steps out of who were the singing comedy troupe off of Capitol Hill. Very funny. And I remember handing them a check for, at the time, this is 30 years ago, it was like $10,000. And I remember thinking, wow, they're making a lot more than I make in comedy clubs. And they're clean, and they're, and there's a whole market here of conventions. And I would say that to comedians. They're like, no, it's just Christmas parties. And I said, no, I think there's more here. So I kind of knew there was something else out there besides comedy clubs. I love the clubs. They're free, and you can do what you want and say what you want. But I kind of like the convention market as well.
Do you have the temptation to kind of push the line, though? Is there that sort of thing you can see where this joke can go? Or...
You can see it. And the difference in the convention market is, the person who's drunk and being a jerk to you might be the CEO who's writing your check. So you can't go after them. You just can't. The comedy clubs you can. And I've had some dicey jokes when I started out, because you do these bar gigs, and sometimes you have to just go into them a little bit. There was no Facebook or iPhones back then. Nobody could, film me and then put it on Twitter and ruin my career. But I was never, even the diciest, if I had to say a cuss word or kind of get mean at someone, it wasn't. I felt like it sometimes. But really, my act was never also one that people feel like they want to scream stuff and yell and be mean and try to get into it with the comedian. It was never one of those kind of acts. So I never really had a lot of hecklers and had to deal with stuff where I felt like I had to, cover my territory or whatever. Put them down.
Is there some comedians that you look to just to see like how they do their act each and every time, a fan of, or you emulate?
Well, the ones I really like, John Panetta unfortunately passed away recently, a couple years ago, I guess. Very funny. Kathleen Madigan's very funny. Jim Gaffigan, very funny. I always like some Jay Leno, Rodney Dangerfield. I like the jokes, like the joke. I do 3 to 4 jokes a minute, kind of like they do. Set up, punch. You don't like this, you'll like this. You keep going, type of thing. And that's what always made me laugh. So that's kind of an old school style, but that's what I've enjoyed.
Yeah, I haven't discovered Jim Gaffigan most recently, and
he's great. Yeah,
like he
started. I think he started. He was ahead of me, obviously, when I started out, but I think he started by saying he was like a Saturn. He looked like a Saturn car owner, and he got kind of known. I think he's the comedian that started that. So he kind of got people on board with the everyday dad look. Very funny guy, really funny. I've enjoyed. Kathleen Madigan's great. Like I said, John Panetta. I'm trying to think of. There's so many funny comedians I know that people have never even heard of. They're working the road, they're working the clubs, and they're very good. And you don't get a chance to. People always look at the stars, and they don't really see the other people who are making a living at it.
So as you're in the career, how did you realize you could pivot some directions and make a living out of it as well? You were writing for different things as well as being a keynote speaker on helping people to bring humor into the profession.
Well, the keynote came later. I did this stand-up comedy. I was a comedian, and then I just finally had a point where I needed to leave my day job. I just couldn't do it anymore. So I jumped off and went into stand-up full-time in the comedy clubs. I picked up some writing gigs after that, just doing some freelance stuff. I've sold jokes to Leno's Tonight Show monologue and guests on the Jerry Springer Show, radio, TV, cartoon strips, syndicated cartoons, greeting cards. I did a lot. I just picked up, here and there, just meeting people who had connections.
Did you say Jerry Springer or Jerry?
Yeah, Jerry Springer Show. I've sold to a lot of different, not to Jerry Springer himself, to guests
Do you
People would
mean
guess.
people isn't that show reality? They
I'm
need
not gonna say.
they needed jokes to be brought up.
Yeah, I think some of. I don't know. I don't. I don't know. I don't know what. I
It's
didn't watch. You know what? I wouldn't even
extravagant.
watch the episode. The person I sold the jokes to, I just said, I'm not watching the episode. All right, I'm not. I'm just. You send me a check. So that was that was a kind of a
But
side
that must be,
interesting thing.
even if you didn't watch it or listen to that particular thing being on the late night show, it must feel pretty good to have written a joke
Oh, it's
and
fun. Yeah, it's fun. It's fun to I wrote for a lot of radio stations around the country, sold a lot of material, and I'd be driving around the country and hear the DJ, say one of my jokes. A friend of mine out here in LA actually one time, we were talking on the phone. She goes, "Oh, this DJ this morning said the funniest top list," and she starts to tell me about it. I said, "You want me to read it to you? It's on my computer." I sold it to him, and I sold but and you know what? I was when I moved out here, I was hanging at the Melrose Improv one night, and it seemed like everybody I knew had a deal, like a development deal, with one of the TV stations, CBS or ABC. I didn't have anything, and I felt really, really was feeling really bad about myself. And I'm driving home that night. It's like 11:30 at night. I walk into my little studio apartment, flip on the TV, and there's Leno doing one of the jokes. I sold him, and I'm like, "Yay, I got something." So it is fun. It is really fun to do that. But the keynote speaking came about 12 years ago, 10 or 12 years ago. I've been doing full time, left my day job 25 years ago. So 10 or 12 years ago, uh, people's 2008 or 9, somewhere in there, groups wanted humor, but we were having a recession, and they said we can't justify just a comedian. We need a message. So
Mhm.
I wrote one. I put together some keynotes, and I'm really one of the only comedians I know that doesn't like working nights and weekends. I'd rather work during the week, during Monday
Mhm.
9 to 5, and keynotes were perfect. I mean, I was doing some comedy shows, usually breakfast, lunch, dinner, but the keynotes were great, and you're funny, and people get a message, and they get some tips, and they just took off like wildfire. And so I was very fortunate to move into to keynote speaking. I do way more of that than I do stand-up comedy. I was touring up until the COVID. I was touring theaters with another comedian in the Baby Boomer comedy show, and we were doing our comedy acts. And I imagine we'll probably pick some of that up next year or this fall at the earliest. Um, but yes, I got into keynote speaking. He had helped me get into keynote speaking as well, and I love it. Just fun. The groups are great. They're not drunk. It's not 11 o'clock at night. I'm doing them at lunch or breakfast, or
Some of them
usually
could be
lunch or
drunk.
breakfast. Yeah, not the conventions. Not
Not,
I have not
no,
really hit too many
no
drunk
one's.
conventions with my keynotes, but the comedy I did at night. I had a couple of comedy keynotes for groups that they were pretty out of control.
I thought there
And you
might
just go up
be.
and think, okay, this is a paycheck. I'm getting a paycheck. I'm doing some combat
Get it
here.
over with. I thought there might be some flasks in some of those suits.
I've worked for a couple of drunk clients that were just wasted, not. Uh, but what do? You're like, okay, just let me get on stage. The worst are, I think the thing, and I really don't do anymore. Many of them, I don't do it. I haven't done it in a couple of years. Is holiday parties, Christmas parties because nobody wants the comedian gets pushed to like midnight because everyone's drinking and partying and dancing, and they just keep pushing you later and later, and you're the only sober one in the room, and those were hard. I was not enjoying those. So.
I interviewed Frank King,
Oh yeah, Frank. I know
and
Frank's one of the ones that got me into corporate comedy. He's great.
yeah, yeah,
He's one of
and
my best
so
friends.
his message is mental health, right?
Yeah.
That's using comedy as well. What is your specific message that you're bringing in with your keynote presentation?
I have two pretty popular keynotes. Oh, three actually. One is the most popular is called "Finding the Funny in Change: How to Use Humor to Handle Change." Big, good one these days. And then "Bouncing Back: Handling Setbacks Like a Comedian." And then I've got one on communications, finding the funny in communications. How to use humor. It's more for salespeople. Use humor and your message to get people to listen to you, connect with you, remember you, want to listen to you.
Do you have a message for just regular people in work opposed to just sales people, that to bring
uh,
comedy into work to make
Yeah, I
No.
see my finding the funny in change. I talk about how to use humor in change situations, how to diffuse tension with it, how to kick off tough conversations. So I've done this for every kind of industry, healthcare, finance, uh, uh, name any kind of education.
Mhm.
I've done it for all any kind of insurance, to tell people how to use humor in business, because it really is a business skill. If you want to sit down and start a conversation, or you just had a big uh, um, change and happen in the office, and you're going to sit down to a staff meeting and not address it. Guess what? Everyone's staring at you. They think you don't understand what they're going through unless you can find a way to address it. And you can do that with humor. You can
Mhm.
pop in a little bit of humor. You've addressed what's going on, and then kind of move on and break the tension, and um, you know change the energy. Change the energy is
You
really
mentioned skill, and obviously it takes skill and talent, and being in communications. You had a marketing job. Some of those probably helped you develop your craft. But is there
Oh yeah,
something even over the last few years, something that you're really trying to hone in on a skill, especially in comedy?
a skill. Not quite sure, like a skill
So
I've learned from comedy.
something that it takes time to develop. There's something that you need. I mean, it could be something like patience, where from one gig to the other, or crafting a joke, and just using different words. Something for people who
Yeah.
are listening, of a skill that might be necessary to
Oh, the
consider.
skill that you need to have for comedy.
Yes.
Oh Lord, patience would be one. As when I first started out, friend Jeff Caldwell said, there's a lot of waiting around in comedy, and that is you're waiting around for the gig. You get to the gig, you're waiting around to go on. There's a lot of waiting around, and you got to find some way to uh, stay up and ready, and to jump on at any moment. But the other skill I think is resilience, because there's a lot of things out of your control
Mhm.
when you get on that stage. It looks easy, but that's only because everything came together easily. You've got the lights and the sound, and the audience is not drunk, and they've been focused, and you've had a good introduction. There are a dozen things that happen before you get on there, and so any one of those out of whack, and you could have a bad show, and you've got to find a way to get yourself mentally back on track after that bad show, because um, if you want to make a living at it, you've got to find a way to put that into a little box and move on. And a lot of times when I analyze it and go, okay, what was it that went right? What was it that went wrong? What could I have controlled? And so a lot of times there's not much. If I could have controlled, then you really have to let it go and move on, because otherwise you will think about that every single time you walk into a situation.
What is the longest um, take that you've ever done? How long have you stayed up on stage? What was the longest amount of time in one particular?
I've done a 2.5 hour keynote before. Had a break, but yeah, they wanted me to do for comedy, man. After a dinner, I tell people you want 35, 45 minutes
Hmm.
tops. People are tired. They've eaten. They've been drinking. They want to go back to their rooms or to the bar. They don't want, I'm not famous, so they don't want to sit here for a long time. But I've done, usually comedy is an hour and 15, probably the tops, but the keynotes have gone longer than that.
How do you develop into 40 minutes? How do you develop your act into 45, maybe even an hour? How does that go from the initial
Putting a
joke?
putting a lot of 1 minutes together.
Yeah.
A lot of callbacks. I do a lot of callbacks to something I said 20 minutes ago. And so it's just crafting. I mean, it's time. I mean, you've just got to sit down and write. And um, as you're on stage, if you come up with stuff off the cuff, be able to write that out, and put that into your act. And a lot of trial and error that builds your act, you know.
Since you started as a babysitter, newspaper delivery person, as well as in the nursing home, but you've also switched careers. Do you have any advice for people just getting into work, no matter what field it is, and even getting into comedy?
Yeah, I would say regardless of the field, you've got to do it a lot. I would say cross pollinate. Look at other industries. I don't just think of yourself as a comedian. You're a marketing person too. You're in different industries, and you've got to do some of the tasks you don't want to do. Many comedians aren't successful because they don't want to market, they don't want to do the PR work, or they don't, they don't like to get on radio or podcasts, or they want someone else to do stuff. Don't leave it to someone else to do it, especially when you're starting out. When you get big and famous, maybe, but not when you're starting out in any industry. Do the things you don't want to do. Make yourself do them, because if you just stay with your little, I'm going to write jokes, there are so many very, very talented comedians. All they want to do is write jokes. And if that's fine, and you want to stay at that level and, write those jokes and get on the stage and do them at the same venues, and you don't want to move, that's your prerogative. But if you want to move, you're going to have to broaden yourself a little bit.
Is there a mistake that you made in your comedy career that
a lot of them
that well, especially I think if you're thinking about what you would have said, staying on the clean side of comedy kind of keeps you a lot safer than I've seen someone last year who, like a YouTube comedian, said something years ago that came back to bite her, and then she canceled, her channel, which had 25, 45 million people on there or something.
Whoa.
So
Wow.
the idea of staying in the safe lane or the clean lane will keep you, but even there's some issues. You could say something just offhand where it could rub, but is there a mistake that you made that it helps you carry through and it just helps you to learn from those mistakes?
I made a lot of mistakes. I
We
made a
all
lot of
do.
mistakes. I'm trying to think, because I'm working on a program for tomorrow about talking about some of my mistakes. And I'm trying to think of some of the ones that I was just going through my head. I think one thing I did that was really a mistake and taught me a lesson was I pushed too hard to move too fast in comedy. On one occasion, a good comedian I know, his name is Lord Corrett, that's his real name, he's out of New York, gave me some great advice when I started as a comedian. He said, stay as an MC as long as you can stand it, because it's a low man on the totem pole. Nobody makes money at MC. Nobody wants to be the MC. And what happens, he says, is people MC and they barely have enough material to get to the next level, to a feature spot. It's MC, feature, headliner. You get in the feature, and then you're a mediocre feature. MC, you need 15 minutes of material. Feature, you need 30, 35. You barely get to feature, and you're just okay. And so you kind of get stuck. He said, Jan, you got stay down there. You can make your mistakes as the MC. You can get really good as the MC. You can pull together 2 separate 15-minute sets. He said, pull those together that are really good MCing and blast through the feature spot, and you'll hit headliner faster. And that's what I did. I took his advice, and that's what I did. One time I didn't, before I ever got his advice, I pushed to be in a feature. I didn't push. I was offered a feature slot at a nice club, and I took it, and I shouldn't have. And I really had a bad show, and I had relatives in the audience, which is always bad. And it was hard, but it reminded me that, hey, this is a process. It's not going to happen just because you want it to happen and you need more money. So patience, but also don't push. You'll know. I mean, I got to the point where there was only 1 or 2 clubs that weren't featuring me, and I let those go. I'm like, you know what? They aren't seeing it, and I'm doing great. And then I blasted through feature and got into headliner. And then I got into headliner, started headlining, and then the door to the corporate comedy, with Frank's help and some other help, opened, and I stepped through that and kind of moved out of the clubs. So, stay as long as you can. Stay at the bottom. You can make the mistakes, because also you get the contacts at the bottom. You work with the headliner. The headliner is the famous headliner. If you're the MC, they have contacts. If they like you, they can help you. If you get to be headliner, you got to have the contacts. And if you don't, because you haven't been doing it very long, you're not going to be able to help anyone else.
It reminds me of the high school athlete who wants to turn professional, so drops out of high school.
Yeah,
right, and it's not quite ready.
Right, and unlike them, I mean, I know sometimes athletes push a little bit because they could get hurt and it could ruin their career. You're not going to get unfunny, and I was very fortunate to start before social media, so I could make mistakes, and nobody in those bar gigs that I did that were so awful, there was no one taping me and saying, look, this person's awful. So
I
that's good.
watched on Netflix last week or something with Jerry Seinfeld and Orny Adams.
Oh yeah, he did that movie
And
with him.
Orny, and I'd like to speak with him and talk to him because he's a hard worker. There's no doubt,
Yeah.
but he's just trying to push it. It's almost like, I'm telling you, I am funny, and I'm like, okay, good. Now just rein it back a little bit, be funny, and then it will come. And it just seems like he's putting the cart before the horse, sort of thing. And that's what it
Well, you
seems
have
like
to
he's
have
doing.
some confidence, and you have
Yeah.
to go out. And one of the best lines I saw at the Punchline in Atlanta, I'm not sure if they're still in the same building, but the green room, right over the doors, you're walking on the stage. Some comedian has carved into the wall, make them come to you.
Mm.
And that's such good advice. You walk out and sort of bring them into your world, make them come to you. Don't go out there and, yeah, this is funny. You have to know it's funny, and you have to have confidence, but then bring them into your world, command the audience. And I think that's good. Of course, right next to it on the side, some other comedian has written, carved in the wall, this is a great room. If you bomb here, you suck, get out of the business. So, so those are the two things you see as you walk out on stage.
It is hard, and I mean, I could only imagine having spoke in front of people, but to get people in your frame of thinking and to let them enjoy the ride. And I can
Right.
picture myself just sitting back being the skeptic, like, okay, you're gonna make me fun, you're gonna make me
And
laugh.
and you're not, if I can't make you laugh, if you're not in
Mm-hmm.
the frame, I can't. If people have had a bad day and they just want to be a jerk, and sit there. Most people come, when you come, especially to a comedy club, you come with a mindset of, oh, I want to see this. This will be funny. I'm open to this. And you really have to be open to it. You get the people that sit like this and stare at you, and I hate this. I look over their heads, because I'm not even going to try to get you to laugh. I don't care, if you're going to have that attitude.
Jan, what about character in comedy? What have you found to be essential? I'm sure it's a little cutthroat. Everyone wants to make everyone laugh, but you kind of want to do well. And you
Yeah.
might settle for being okay, but you would rather do better than that person. Not against them personally, but you don't want to be the worst.
Well, certainly don't do well at the expense of others, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you have to run your own race. I mean, you really can't pay attention to what. It's so easy to get in your head and to start saying, "Wow, they had a great set. I got to follow that." You just have to follow it. I mean, I was following Michael Richards from Seinfeld. He was walking out to standing ovations. It was at the Comedy Magic Club here in Los Angeles. This is before he had the rant and everything. I don't. He was a very nice guy. I don't know what happened with all that live comedy, But he was walking out to standing ovations, and people loved him because they were doing like 20 comics a night. You get 5 minutes, and it was a fun. There was a birthday celebration they do every July. And it's like, I could either get in my head and go, how am I going to do this? Or I can think, how can I do this? I'm funny. And so I went out, had a great line. I went out, I said, hey, Michael Richards, Seinfeld, what was his character? Kramer on Seinfeld.
Kramer.
Great guy. I said, he reminds me of every blind date I've ever had. And the place went nuts. And then I just went into my act. So you acknowledge it.
Yeah.
You don't try to
Yeah.
top it. You don't try to put them down. And do your own thing and bring people into you and what you're going to, okay, and that's there. I'm going to talk about this.
Yeah, he was on Seinfeld's documentary, or what was it? The Coffee in a Car.
Oh, okay. Great guy. Yeah. A very
And
nice
he really
person.
regrets whatever he said. I don't even know what he said, but he regrets saying that, and it kind of threw him off. And I think he needs to get his mojo back. I don't know.
Well,
Or
I also, you know what? There's something about live performance, and people pay for that live performance. And if something in the room, and I really truly don't know what transpired. I just know
yeah,
he was a
nor
good
do I.
guy, and I don't know what happened. But people pay for the live experience, and it's a shame when nowadays a lot of professional comedians are saying how a lot of stars are saying how it's so hard to go in and work on new material or something because you got someone popping up with a cell phone going, hey, look at this person stinks, their act sucks. Well, no, it's new material. And you
Mm,
try to do that, and it's very hard to do. because you're going to have the internet going, well, they've lost their, mojo now. They don't know how to do it. They've been in the business too long. So to me, I mean, it's frightening to go on stage and something happens and it's taken out of context. And maybe again, I don't know what happened there, so I'm not going to say he did good or he did bad or whatever. But things get taken out of context. People pay for a live show, and they really should put their cell phones away and enjoy the live show. And if someone gets into it with a heckler, then have it unfold the way it unfolds. But certainly comedians need to be nice. Don't fall back on the if it's racial slurs or whatever it is, try to be creative with your coming back. I found out the few times I've been heckled, one surefire way to get the guy to shut up, it's always a guy, sorry, it's always a guy, is to go after his girlfriend or his wife that's with him. They will get him to shut up, and don't be mean. Just start telling, hey, you're with this guy? Really? you're and they get so embarrassed, they will get him to shut up. So, use some tactics, some creative tactics. But it can happen at any time for a live event or a virtual or anything. And we got that in the back of our head, watch what you say, because it's now could shoot. Well, there's the country music guy that's now in trouble for stuff coming back at him.
The other day there was something, yeah.
Yeah, I can't think of his name, but
no.
Thankfully I had my bad sets during the pre-social media days. I hope there's nothing out. And I was always and always have been up until Zooms. I've been a stickler for nobody videotaping me. I mean, I've stopped this show with 2,000 nurses once, and with a woman holding her cell phone up, and I stopped it and was very nice about it. I said, hey, because I tried to get her to stop, and I tried to get her. I was shaking my head. I was looking right at her, shaking my head like, put it away. And finally, because it's my act. It's my only.
What are they holding? What do you mean by holding their cell phone up?
She's videotaping me. She's videotaping me. And it's my source of income. And I'm not saying anything wrong. I just don't want her videotaping me and sending it around, because I want to control what goes out there. And I stopped it and I said, hey, I see some people videotaping with their cell phones. Please put them away right now. And then it kind of stopped the show. And I thankfully had done some research on the group, and I knew nurses sometimes are frustrated with doctors, and so I was able to come up with a quick line to say, hey, how do you chastise a nurse? Do you call her a doctor? And the place went up again, and I went back into my act. So that fortunately worked out, but I've had to do things like that because I want to control what's out there. I'm not saying anything bad on stage, but the lighting could be bad. They could have a terrible angle. Their audio could stink with their, they're holding up there. And then that gets out there, and people go, well, she's not that good. She's not that funny. Or they catch one joke that doesn't get a great laugh. And so I'm really a stickler for controlling as best I can. Now virtuals, everybody wants to record. I said, you can put it on a password protected site for 30 days, and then you take it off. And, I'm really a stickler for that.
I wonder what goes through your mind, a comedian's mind, when a joke that you've been working on, you have a set for 40 minutes, you've done it a number of times, that particular joke, and it doesn't work. But you have your next one, it's setting up for something else. What is going on in your mind if you're not getting the particular laugh that you hope for, that you got in Milwaukee, that you got down here? What is that? Is it just grinded through? What's going on in your mind?
For me it's I know it works because it's worked before. I know it. Also for me, I know the first couple minutes, I call it sort of my gauge, my failure gauge. The first couple minutes I do is on kids and family, and those jokes always hit way up here. They're just across the board. If I get in front of a group and they hit way down here, first off, I know that's the way this group is. They just maybe they're accountants. I've no offense to accountants. I've been in front of accountants. They laugh differently. They analyze your joke and they laugh differently. So I know that it's hitting down here. This is how they are. It kind of calms me down because I go, okay, that's how they are. I'm not bombing. They laugh. They just don't laugh like the nurses did, so it calms down. And the history of the joke, I don't analyze every single joke as I'm saying it. Once in a while I'll hit a joke. One time I hit a joke. I was in a comedy club. It was I think it was a fundraiser. and I did this McDonald's joke and just rocked. And I thought, and in my head, I thought, wow, that joke usually does good, but boy, it really did good.
Mhm.
And afterwards, the club owner ran over and goes, "That was great, that McDonald's joke." And I forgot it was a fundraiser for Ronald McDonald House. It was about their food being bad,
Mhm.
but she goes, "They know their food's bad. That you had guts to say that joke." And I thought, thank God I didn't realize what I was saying halfway through, because I probably would have swallowed the joke and or screwed it up or
Yeah.
stopped
Yeah.
saying it. So I had just said it in my regular act and it just rocked. And I thought, oh God, that went pretty good. What wonder why? And then come to find out, these people had a connection.
As I had mentioned, I have a newfound appreciation for comedy, but I also watched many hours of comedians. I even threw back like Delirious. I mean, just from heyday times. Is there something about comedy or as a comedian people may not understand? And like with my limited research, like I said, I'd like to be a comedian, but as you said, everybody wants to be a comedian or think they can be. Is there something about it that people don't understand that you would like them to understand, or even about you as a comedian?
I would, well, at first I would like them to understand the amount, what you see on stage is years, and what you see on Netflix is literally years of comedians and their best stuff, that they've worked on forever, around the country, and have worked their butts off to get, worked terrible gigs and good gigs and low paying gigs and no paying gigs to get that. So it's not, for the most part, it's not an overnight thing. And there are so many elements, like I was mentioning before, that go into something working. Like you see that, you see someone in front of 10,000 people. Well, they have lights and they have a good microphone, and they have not had, you know, dancing girls go in front of them, or some crappy, someone giving a speech that, I've had to follow. They read off the list of people in the organization who died, and then they send me out. I mean, so many factors go in to setting you up so that
Mhm.
then you go in and you can kill. Then you're set for success. And any one of those goes off, and someone tries to be funny, and I've had people get up and try to be funny, and we got a comedian coming up. She better be funny or we're not paying her. I've had someone try to calm the crowd down by going up and yelling, "Shut the hell up! We have a comedian." Everyone, shut the hell up. I then you set me up for failure. I had an agent hand me a check once as he's paying me after the show, and he said, "I wish I could make this much money for 45 minutes." And I just blew up at him. I said, "This isn't for 45 minutes. You're paying me for the last 10 years being on the road. I've slept in my car. I've slept in crappy, comedy condos and crappy hotels." I said, "What you saw up there was the easy part. That was 45 minutes of fun."
Mm.
And I about took his head off. So people need to understand what goes into it. And every comedy, like comedy clubs get it. They understand how to run a show, but there's still some, you have someone who's drunk or trying to help you out and heckling. You've got the check drop that comes in right in the middle of your show. You got someone ordering drinks or dropping a tray, or there's so many factors, that go into. And when you see a perfect show that goes great, a lot went in to get that
Mm.
great. It wasn't, and walking in with the material that you've practiced and worked on is the icing.
It surely is people, I think, research what comedians do to try to, lighten the load of people. I think
Right.
that you would get a lot of benefit from looking into what comedians do on a very long-term basis to get you to laugh for a few moments.
Right, right. And so we should also support the comedians when and the arts in general, the entertainers, and local comedians, go out to some local clubs, go out to some bar gigs and some comedy clubs, and support the unknown comedians, because they're very funny comedians out there who are working the road that their whole life. And they're not famous, but they're funny, and should go out and see them.
What's your goal, Jan? What is something that you have
Boy,
overarching
get out
that
of
you'd
COVID. What's my goal? I just so much enjoy the keynotes, the
Mhm.
humor keynotes. I like writing. I've got, hopefully I'll get I had some big writing gigs that were are on hold until the world opens up and the corporations open back up. Um, I think I think I'm doing at the moment what I enjoy doing, or was on the track of doing what I enjoy doing. Um, I don't ever see myself retiring. I think my goal would be to get a little more known so that I'm not having to go after as much work. A little more work comes to me. I get a number of, people calling me for work, but I do a lot of booking on my own. I have a part-time assistant who works with me, and she does a lot of my booking. I'd like her to not have to do as much marketing, just kind of
Hmm.
glide a little bit. Maybe that's when I'll start cutting back and semi-retirement or something. But I
Jan,
love it. I don't think I'll ever quit.
as a comedian, you also mentioned sleeping in your cars for the work. Is there
Yeah.
some adversity that you have faced that either helps or hinders your work as a comedian, but you can also use that adversity to encourage others in the adversity they face in their work?
Well, I'd say starting out, not so much now. Starting out, being a woman was good and bad. All right. It was bad because I would never put two women on a show together. They called it a
Mhm.
women's show. You'd never think of twice of putting three white guys on a show or
Mm.
three black guys, but you would put two women. But it was good. It was good in that if you're a good woman comic, you stand out more. Now, if you have a bad show, you stand out more too. And
Mhm.
you're bombing for every woman that's out there. If a woman has a bad set, woman comic, that everyone's going to walk away saying, "Oh, women aren't good." Twice, I've had groups. One group came up to me after a show at the Comedy Castle in Michigan, in Detroit, and they said we have to apologize. When we saw there's a woman on the bill, all of us looked at each other and said, "This is going to suck." It's a woman, because they think we're dirty, they think we're not funny, and they said you were fantastic, and we apologize. And the other time was out here in California. I was walking up to an event and to a comedy club, and there was a group standing in front of my picture, and one of the women in the group goes, "Oh, yuck! It's a woman comedian. Yuck! I hate them." And I walked by her and I said, "Well, we're not that bad." And she got really embarrassed, and we went inside, and I had a rocking set, and I can't see anything from the stage, but I knew where they were sitting.
Mhm.
Every time a joke hit, I'd look in that direction like her. I gotcha. So that you know, and for that, I just said, do your thing. I mean, do your thing, be funny. And I had a comedian one time who uh he was very, very, very dirty, and he was told to be clean by the club owner. I told him, I don't care what you do. I'm not going to tell you not to do your act. Do your act. Progressively all week got dirtier and dirtier and dirtier. And I'd still go up and follow him. And at the end of the week, he came up to me and he said, "I don't get it." Because I have thrown everything at you. I've been as, dirty. I've gotten the crowd up, riled up. I've done audience work. I've got it. You walk on and you follow me with that clean kid stuff. What? I don't get it. Because I want your job, and he was trying. He said, "I want your job," and he was trying to make me look bad so that he could get the headliner spot. And I looked at him and I just said, "Just do your thing, man. Don't stop trying to get me. Do your thing." That's when the club owner sees your humor and you're funny, and they'll move you up. I'm not the funniest comedian out there, but I do a good job. I show up on time. I don't drink up every beer in the bar. I do what I say I'll do. If I'm going to do 45 minutes, I do 45 minutes. I don't do an hour, and I'm polite and courteous and professional. I some people miss it on the easy stuff like that. I said, stop
Mm.
trying, just stop trying to get other comedians and make people look bad. Do your thing, and people will, uh, the stuff will resonate. Your jokes will resonate with the club owner, and they'll move you up. And that's what happened with me.
Yeah, that's I don't mind people who have a little bit more risky material, but I think there's also then you have to be riskier and riskier. It's kind of like you let the cat out of the
Yeah,
bag and you have to kind of catch it, and
and
it's
I
not
don't
easy.
care. Be funny. Just have
Yeah,
a
just be
punchline.
funny.
Be funny. I don't care if you're dirty, clean,
Yeah.
Christian. A lot of people think clean means Christian. If you're Christian comedian, you have to be clean. But if you bill yourself as the Christian comedian and do churches, if you're a clean comedian, doesn't necessarily mean you're doing the church stuff.
Hmm.
But I think people think that they think, oh, you're clean, so you must be doing a lot of
Hmm.
church material. Um, but have a punchline. If, like I said, if you're dirty, and you cuss a lot or you talk about topics that are a little dicier, you'll find your venue. It won't be where I work, but there's a lot of famous comedians who are dirty. Richard Pryor would cuss, but his stuff was funny. And you take out the cuss words, it's still funny, and that's what you're aiming for. Be funny, then say it the way you'd say it.
I
They're
watched him.
paying for you. They're paying for you. Eddie Murphy, he's funny. He cusses, but he's funny. Be funny. That's the number one rule. Joan Rivers cussed a lot, but boy, she was funny. But she had edgy, dirty material. She's funny. So those are you're younger than me. Those are my generation people.
No, I've listened to them as well. I actually listened to Richard Pryor last weekend, and yeah, they are funny, and I appreciate comedians immensely. Jan, how can people get in touch with you?
Thank you. My website, theworklady.com. Or LinkedIn or Twitter or Facebook or any of that stuff. Theworklady.com is my website. Though Jan at theworklady is .com is my email.
Jan, one final question, and that is, why do you work?
So I can have fun, ride my motorcycles, and hike the national parks.
What kind of motorcycle do you have?
I have a Yamaha 650 V-Star and a Honda 350 CB350, and I got a couple little scooters.
Nice. Jan McInnis, the work lady, comedian, keynote speaker, comedy writer, and author of Finding the Funny Fast. I appreciate the time you've given me and the work that you do.
Thank you, Brian. Take care.
I'm BrianVee. Thanks to Jan McInnis, the work lady, for her interview today. I really do have appreciation for comedians. It's a strong suggestion just to search out how comedians do their work. They work hard. As for me, please subscribe, share, like, comment. If you'd like to be on the show, someone that would make a good guest, email me at whywework, brianv@gmail.com. I'm BrianVee, and this is Why We Work.